You are now watching The Meech.
As I'm sure a lot of you are aware, I decided to leave Twitter. It's been a decision I've been considering for months, but I finally decided to pull the plug and leave, because truthfully speaking, Twitter is not a fun place to be. I'd rather play a port of Paper Mario Sticker Star on the Virtual Boy, having it glued to my face until I 100% it, while getting my wisdom teeth removed, than deal with Twitter again. But why is that? In this video, I'm going to share the main reasons why I left Twitter, and why it's probably best to avoid the platform. I'm mainly talking about the Nintendo Twitter fanbase, but the same applies to almost every other fanbase as well. Anyone remember the episode of Icarly, I Meet Fred? I know it sounds silly to use an Icarly episode for reference, but it's actually extremely relevant to what Twitter truly is. When people say Icarly was ahead of its time, they ain't kidding. If you don't know who Fred is, 1. Count your blessings, and 2. You're gonna have to immediately revoke those blessings, because I'm gonna tell you who Fred is anyway. Fred started off as a YouTuber making silly videos, with his main shtick being the high-pitched voice. He was the first YouTuber ever to gain 1 million subscribers, and was so popular to the point where he appeared on numerous TV shows, had not 1, not 2, but 3 TV movies, his own show, and a spin-off sort of thing called Marvin Marvin, all of which were pretty terrible, even with Lucas Cruikshank, the creator of Fred, stating so. But to sum up the episode of Icarly, I Meet Fred, Freddy states in a respectable manner that he just doesn't find Fred all that funny. Fred then says it hurt his feelings, so bad to the point that he's never gonna make videos again. Everyone gets mad at Freddy and attempt to cancel iCarly with hate sites like IHateICarly.com. Fred reveals it was just a publicity stunt, and then they make a collab video together. From a critical standpoint, the message of this episode is awful. Freddy did nothing wrong, he just stated his opinion, and everyone went ballistic. But iCarly is fiction. It's a show that had a guy dancing covered in peanut butter, though fortunately not with taco shells on picture day, Spencer inadvertently allowing prisoners to escape through a giant pair of pants, and even weirder stuff like that. iCarly isn't made to be taken seriously, but this episode perfectly describes what Twitter is. I'll use some of my tweets for example. I'm sure a lot of you know I hate Nintendo's free content update model with the burning passion. Essentially what they do is release games unfinished, then fix them later with free content updates, fooling players into believing they're getting more content, when in reality, they're just getting the rest of the game. You can't tell me Mario Tennis Aces was a finished game when it didn't even have a stage select screen and added an opening cutscene almost a year after the game launched. Mario Golf Super Rush may be slightly better, but it still uses a fix-it-later approach. I did a whole video about the issue, but I feel a lot of people are unaware how bad it truly is, because it's mainly only severely impacted the Mario sports games. Don't get me wrong, Mario sports games used to be amazing, but they're nowhere near as popular as some of Nintendo's other franchises. What did I decide to do? I used a series that's near and dear to many people, and created a concept of how a future installment could look, using the fix-it-later approach. That being Mario Kart, I tweeted something along the lines of this: if Nintendo fans continue to brush off Nintendo releasing unfinished games, this is what Mario Kart 9 is going to be like. I used screenshots from Mario Kart 8's E3 2013 demo with 12 characters, found a generic racetrack on Google Images entitled a Mario Circuit, and added Waluigi Pinball with the asterisk. Free content updates will be added. What was genuine criticism got mocked, warped into whining, and showcased how low a lot of Nintendo fans' standards for games truly are. Disagreement is fine. If everyone liked the same thing, the world would be a very boring place. I'm proud to be part of the Virtual Boy fan club that consists of me, Keith Apicary, and of course Tricky Nick. I know many of you think I don't like the Virtual Boy based on the beginning of the video, but I actually do like it, just not glued to my face. I do hate Sticker Star though. Anyways, let's take a look at the YouTube video I did covering the same subject. Those who disagreed said so in a respectful and responsible manner, one saying Kirby Star Allies wasn't unfinished, just incredibly mediocre. I could totally see that, and occasionally, I see some people say Super Mario Maker 2 used a fix-it-later approach, which I disagree with that, and that's fine. Warping criticism into whining like Twitter does is not okay. What's really funny to bring up is that people seem to be more concerned about the terminology than the actual problem with Mario Golf Super Rush.
The game isn't unfinished, just lacks content.
Isn't that the definition of unfinished? Well, according to Twitter, games are only unfinished if they're buggy or broken, like Cyberpunk 2077 or Sonic 2006. Those games are indeed unfinished and awful, but that doesn't excuse Nintendo from releasing full-price games that are barren in content. If you like Mario Golf Super Rush, fine. That's one thing, but you cannot deny that Mario Golf World Tour on the 3DS launched with significantly more content, and that's a fact. And if a game lacks important and basic features like a stage select screen and AI difficulty toggle, it's perfectly fair to call the game unfinished. I feel Nintendo's biggest waste of money is having a PR department, because they have fans on Twitter defending them for free. Words like entitled and ungrateful are thrown around constantly, when the meaning of those words are completely different. Being ungrateful is whining that you didn't get the Christmas gift that you wanted. Being entitled means one thinks they deserve special privileges, and criticizing products is not entitled or being ungrateful. There actually exists accounts showcasing Nintendo fans criticizing games or business practices and label it as nothing but complaining. People try to invalidate genuine criticism. There's nitpicking like being upset that Luigi's Mansion 3 used watermelons instead of pumpkins in one area. Not to say the criticism isn't valid, but a bit silly in my opinion. But wanting $60 games to launch complete is a genuinely important criticism. Let's say Apple released the iPhone 13 without a way to message your friends until a few months later. You would be pissed. Now let's take a look at another tweet I made. Everyone wants a virtual console on Switch. Retro game prices have skyrocketed, and Nintendo knows how much fans want these classic games. What Nintendo will do now is find ways to give fans these classic games and charge full price for them. Super Mario 3D All-Stars. Want to play just Super Mario Sunshine? You can't do that. It's all or nothing for $60. The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD. It's an enhanced Wii port with a few quality of life improvements, and I will have no issues with this, except that it costs $60. This is why I believe Nintendo doesn't have a virtual console on the Switch, and I said these business practices were EA levels of scum. And yet again, the criticism was warped into me apparently thinking that Nintendo is just as bad as EA, which is a company that mistreats its employees and buys companies just to shut them down. When I said EA levels of scum, I was referring to aggressive monetization, loot boxes, and anti-consumer practices. That's what EA is mainly known for. Any logical or sane person would know that charging too much for a game is nowhere near as awful as mistreating employees, because Nintendo is known to treat their employees quite well. But again, it was warped into people thinking that I think Nintendo and EA are just as bad as each other. And by the way, just because companies like EA are far worse than Nintendo, that doesn't make Nintendo have the magic goo to prevent them from being criticized. Nintendo has done a lot of scummy business decisions in the past 2 years, and it's completely acceptable to call them out. What's rarer than finding a shiny Pokemon in the wild? Finding civil discussion on Twitter. I'm all for discussions and different opinions, as long as nobody's being hurt, of course. In fact, it's pretty cool hearing different opinions. Reese's favorite game in the original Super Mario Bros. Trilogy is Super Mario Bros. 2, which deviates from the usual Super Mario Bros. 3. Soshi's favorite Mario Kart is Mario Kart Arcade Grand Prix, and it brings me a lot of joy knowing there's someone who's even more passionate about the Mario Kart arcade games than I am. And let's say I disagree with the opinions to a stronger extent. Reese likes Mario Golf Super Rush. I'm not a fan of the game. EB the original master likes the SpongeBob spin-offs. I don't. Have our opinions impacted our friendship? Of course not. They're just cartoons and video games. When these discussions are in the YouTube comments and live streams, they're civil and all in good fun. But Twitter, it's a fiasco. Part of the problem is the character limit. You can't fully get your point across. Even if you start a thread, people will only read the first post and argue in a barbaric manner. Arlo, who is perhaps the most wholesome and honest Nintendo YouTuber out there, stated that he just found Kirby Star Allies an okay game, and people went after him for that. Arlo, does this guy look like a monster to you? The only monster he resembles is Cookie Monster. I know trolls and bullies exist on every site, but Twitter seems to have a lot more of them. I don't care or mind if you disagree with me or anyone else, but when it turns into bullying or mocking, that's where I draw the line. Nobody on Twitter really hurt my feelings or anything like that, because I saw the source where it was coming from. Usually major Nintendo shills, but I understand how other people may be impacted differently, and not in a good way. Not only does Twitter bring off bad vibes, but it's extremely addictive as well. This could really apply to any social media platform, but I spent way too much time on Twitter, whether it was checking to see likes, retweets, replies, and stuff like that. I always found myself opening the Twitter app impulsively, and I realized I spent more time on Twitter than I ever needed to. This is part of the reason why I left, but the first two reasons are the main reasons why I left. To be fair, I have made some cool friends on Twitter. usually those who have been fans of the videos, and of course 64 iOS and Uncle Al. Twitter has pages dedicated to sharing obscure information on games, which is always interesting to see, but the negatives completely outweighed the positives, which is why I left. To summarize everything, I left Twitter because of the toxicity of the platform. The reason I originally got Twitter was to interact with fans and get alerts when amiibos were in stock, but this is no longer the case. Amiibos are usually readily available, and as for fan interaction, a lot of fans weren't on Twitter to begin with. All it led to were pointless arguments, misinterpretation, and bullying. I'm totally cool with criticism, but I draw the line when criticism turns into bullying. In fact, I saw 2 people tweet about how they lost some of their loved ones, and instead of compassion, there were assholes out there making jokes about it, like, "Did you find your dad?" after someone lost their dad, and "At least I have a brother" when someone lost their brother. Things have also happened to some of my friends where they were accused of being bots, and even worse, someone made fake tweets that were homophobic attempting to cancel someone who just made a silly tweet about Pyra. I actually had to make a tweet about a fan who made a joke stating that he is in no way a Nintendo shill. I realized that I was gaining nothing being on Twitter, and it only served as a basic for negativity. Civil discussions are pretty much non-existent, but just because I left Twitter for good doesn't mean I'm off social media. If you want to contact me, my Instagram is DemichYT. I also plan on opening a Discord server very soon, but I'd like to do a little more research before officially starting one. So in the end, I just decided to flip the bird and leave Twitter, and maybe that's for the best. So there you have it. This is why I left Twitter and why I encourage you guys to avoid it. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments and keep calm and dada on.